Oh, okay, let's try this for a topic. Do you remember Ann Landers? Most of you are too young to remember Ann Landers, although a lot of my viewers are my age. Ann Landers wrote for newspapers in the 70s, I guess. Yeah, 70s or so, about love and marriage or something like that. And she gave marriage counseling in the newspaper, and people would write her letters and she would answer them. And of course, one day somebody realized she wasn't married, she was divorced and she was single. And there she was writing and talking about marriage. So I'm going to use her as what do you call it, a thing in the gazettes? I mean, you think, in Illinois, the law said blah, 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 it was all right, okay? And then, okay. So you get the point. I tried it once, marriage. I think I'd like to try it again. The whole concept of marrying at a church, of course, for me would be a bit crazy because I don't believe in that establishment. And I would almost say the same thing about government. But on the other hand, you can't have a whole whack of people without some kind of government. And the German government ain't bad. It's sort of a social market Wirtschaft or something like that. And it's not a bad system. It's one of the better ones. Because, well, the poor people aren't so poor that they can't eat. And I think if you got a system like that, it helps reduce things like crime and stress and whatnot. But we're not going to talk about politics. We've got to talk about marriage. And so I got married in this country, mostly because if I didn't, I would have problems getting a job and staying here. But we were in love, and it was nice, and it was romantic. But we got married in the, what's it called, the justice of the peace or kind of thing. And it worked out for 3 or 4 years. And of course, then you have friends where it works out a bit longer, so you get to see them and having their marriage and how it works out. And I think it would be a good idea for young people to understand that this huge love thing, it's nice. I mean, being in love is cool. But love becomes something different after a couple of years, and it becomes very different after a couple of kids. So I think they should be teaching this in school as well, okay? I mean, when you're a teenager and you're in love, that's magical. You should go with it and have your fun, but know that it's having your fun, and that you're not necessarily going to be a good pair to live with one another for a long time, and especially, well, you don't know who you're going to be until you're, say, 25 or 40 or so. Women usually know a little sooner than men, but men usually don't figure it out till they're 40, and sometimes they never do. So you got to be a little bit more careful when you decide to have children. And there's something else, and I think this is the main point I want to make. I think we got to realize that in nature, it isn't so normal. Okay, it's natural to be completely and utterly obsessed with one another, because that's what brings you together. You have sex, and then you have a child, and then after you have a child, I mean, every mother that I've talked to, the first thing they want to do after they have a child is have another one, because, well, it was a great feeling having that child on your breast and somebody that was up-hanging on you and all that kind of stuff. And so she goes for another one. But then she gets to a point, and it's natural, she gets to a point where she might want to have a third one, and of course that's less and less in the Western world, but it sometimes gets there. And then she thinks to herself, but this husband of mine, I'm not so interested in him anymore, and I want to go check out somebody else. And most people would say, well, this is having an affair. This is not right. But on the other hand, when you think about it biologically, it makes a whole lot of sense for our bodies to tell us, okay, you've been together now for 4 or 5 years, you love one another, that's pretty. Maybe you're a little bit more like brother and sister now, or however the relationship works. But you simply don't have the same sexual drive as you did before, and there is a possibility, which statistics tell us about 40% of the third child comes from a different man. So why do we need to lie about it? Just realize it. Just say, okay, the woman has 2 kids, and she might want to keep her original man because they like living together, if they're old enough when they get married and they know what they want. And you should live with somebody for a while before you marry. I think that's best. I mean, marriage, you don't have to marry from the same country, or it's just taxes. I mean, what is it anymore? It doesn't matter. But the thing is, if the woman decides that she wants to have a third kid from someone else, and that means she's got like some kind of a relationship that's maybe even with a friend who says, okay, I want to be uncle. And then that uncle is the father of the kid. Maybe you don't even tell the kid. Maybe the kid just thinks that's uncle. And it was the way we used to do it before we got this holy matrimony thing. So, and that's our nature. And I'm just wanting to tell you that be aware that if you get married and hitched, there's a good chance it will end in divorce. A friend of mine said that one out of one marriages end in divorce. I don't think the statistics are that high, but marriage isn't holy. Come, it's just a thing we do. It's a ritual. It's a ritual. If it's in the church, it can be pretty. It's pretty silly. Sometimes pretty costly. Sometimes it's way too costly. But you can have a nice party. We had a nice party. It didn't cost us anything much, and it worked out all right. And like my dad once said, which was completely crazy, maybe get marriage certificates for 5 years. And you can either renew them or they're just null and void at the end of 5. And the other thing is, you got to realize things change when you get married and when you have kids, and your relationship changes. And if for some reason you're having an extramarital relationship, it might be natural, and it might actually not be so bad, and it might not even mean that you have to go have a divorce. So that's my marriage counsel thing, is let's not say that having an extramarital relationship is adultery, because this is a religious word, and I think it would be better for us to be more honest about it and just say, look, I feel like having sex with that person, what do you think? And if the person says, I think that would be bad, then, well, then at least you know.